I see myself a historian of the Ottoman period and not of minorities, for the simple reason that in the Ottoman Empire, just like in any empire, there were no minorities. Or to put it differently, in an empire, everyone's a minority, right? An empire, tons of these petitions, I've seen a bunch of them. And some of them say, yes, we love the French and we don't want a Syrian national state. And the others say, no, we want a Syrian national state, get rid of the French. And so I found a petition, it's absolutely the original, and it's signed by Suleiman al-Assad. We don't want the French. We can live very well together with other Syrians. Who said, oh yeah, this is Assad signing it. That proves that the president's, back then the president's father, has always been a traitor to Syria. And so it's silly. This Ibn Taymiyyah syndrome, I got this from an activist historian who lived in Belgium who wrote about this. I think that's probably true from what I understand. The idea, throughout history, once again, I don't want to romanticize, I don't want to present the Ottoman Empire as everyone having been a happy minority or something. That's not it. No one was happy. I guess it's important for a not very democratic regime like Bashar al-Assad to associate himself with people he can trust from his own villages and to recall to them, look, we have to stick together because all of the Sunnis have always been trying to oppress or even kill all of us. Historically, that's not true. Modern nationalism, this is true in the Ottomans in the Middle East, it's true everywhere. Modern nationalists everywhere like to point to past suffering, right? They like to point to how they were oppressed by this and that empire or these and those foreigners, and this is why we survived, we stuck together, and this is why we are who we are today. This is normal.
Stefan Winter, I'm very glad to have you here as my guest in Mazaj Shar'i podcast.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Before starting our conversation, I would like to give our listener and viewer an introduction about you. Stefan Winter, you are a Canadian historian and researcher at UQAM University of Quebec at Montreal for history. And you have many and several research, you are recognized for many and several research on the Ottoman Empire and the social history of the Levant. And especially you are focusing on minority community such as Druze, Shia, Kurd and Levantines. Also, you are the author of several academic books such as The Shia of Lebanon, Syrian-Kurdish intersection in the Ottoman Empire, and also a history of the Alawis from medieval Aleppo to the Turkish Republic, which will be our main focus and discussion today. As a beginning, maybe we can say that you are the historian of minority of the Levant, or especially as I saw you have many books about those minority. And what attracted you to focus your study about those minority of Levant?
Well, first of all, I would say I see myself a historian of the Ottoman period and not of minorities, for the simple reason that in the Ottoman Empire, just like in any empire, there were no minorities. Or to put it differently, in an empire, everyone's a minority, right? An empire is a big state with the Sultan or the Emperor or the King of maybe speaking a different language, different religion than most of his other subjects. And in the Ottoman Empire, okay, the Alawis, the Druze were minorities, but everyone was minority, right?
Even the Sunnah.
Well, the Sunni, Kurds were minorities, yes, but Arabs were minorities and even Turks were minorities.
Exactly.
Alawis were minorities, Druze were minorities, but so were Christians, so were Sunnis, even though the Ottoman Empire was a Sunni empire, but the Sunni people, they were a minority too. So what I do, I see, the different groups I'm working on, sometimes you call them minorities, nowadays you call them minorities.
Exactly.
In the Ottoman Empire, what I looked at is really rural groups, tribes, rural populations, which some of them are identified by their language, some are identified by their religion, some are identified by their tribe, some are identified by one thing at one moment and another thing another moment. So I'm yes, nowadays we see them as minorities, but I'm interested in how does the Ottoman Empire deal with rural groups that we don't know about. In a city, we have minorities too. In a city, the bakers of Aleppo are a minority. The merchants are a minority. The janissaries are a minority. But those people, we know about their history. They write their own history. They've got intellectuals
Exactly.
The ulama write their history. In rural areas, they don't write their own history. That's the difference.
Yeah. And is it a reason they don't write because it's a rural society, far from big cities and schools?
Sure, yeah. Schools, forget schools. Before the 19th century, there's no schools. No one has an education except a couple of ulama families in the cities, maybe some Christian monks in monasteries in the mountains. But 95% or whatever the population, they don't read, they don't write, so they don't tell their own story.
Exactly.
So we have Ottoman documents, which are not perfect because the Ottomans are interested in taxes and that's it. But that's how we can approach these groups.
Okay, understand. And the Alawite have been often maybe misunderstood by outsiders. Why do you think is that?
Misunderstood in the sense that, in a pre-modern period, before they get their education and write their own history and so on, we don't know a lot about rural groups. That's true for the Alawis, but it's true for other people as well. So yes, I mean, their religious theology and so on, that's secret, special to their own sheikhs and so on. That's kind of the same thing for all the other groups as well. And because we don't know anything about the population, because there are no historians who write about them, because the Ottomans, collect their taxes, but that's it, we don't know a lot about them as a group. I don't think they're more misunderstood than other rural groups.
We don't have a lot of information about them, and maybe different or bad idea or
we don't have a lot of information about them.
Stereotyping idea, maybe.
We don't have a lot of information about them, but we don't have a lot of information about anyone who's in the hinterland, who's in a rural countryside area. It's true that because they get identified by the religion, a religion which the Ottoman state does not like, let's be honest. I mean, they don't like Shiism, they don't like Alawism, Nusayrism, and so on. So every time they write about them, they'll, not every time, but often they will say, these people are heretics, and we don't like them, and they're bandits and brigands and so on. It's because of their religion, and so they use a bunch of stereotypes. That doesn't mean they don't want their taxes, but they're going to portray them as bad people. But they do that with all populations. With, for example, Kurds, a Kurdish tribe or a Turkish tribe or an Arab Bedouin tribe, they don't like them either. They're going to insult them too. They're going to say they're bandits and brigands. Okay, they're not going to talk about the religion because that doesn't bother them.
The same religion.
It's the same religion. But still, they're not going to say nice things about them either. So, yes, the Alawis are misunderstood, but once again, so is everyone else too. So let's not exaggerate the not being understood of one group.
I understand. And also in your book, you challenge the idea that the Alawite have been always just an oppressed minority. Why do you see that is an oversimplification?
Well, once again, it really turns a lot on the word minority, I would say. They were oppressed. I'm not going to say they were not oppressed, because everyone in the Ottoman Empire was basically oppressed. Ottoman empires, and it's not just the Ottomans, empires are not democratic states. They don't care about their subjects. They don't have citizens. These are subjects. The subjects are there to pay taxes. All religions being the same. No one gets an education. No one gets a hospital. No one gets, infrastructures and so on. Everyone just pays taxes. And so everyone, in a sense, is not doing well in the Ottoman Empire. Now, everyone who later will talk about their community, their history, they say, we were oppressed because we're Alawis. The others will say, we were oppressed because we're Greeks. The Kurds, nowadays, modern Kurdish nationalists will say, yes, we were oppressed because they didn't like Kurds. That's not true specifically. Everyone was, used, exploited by the state. Everyone was treated a bit differently because of their status. Christians pay jizya. Alawis are called heretics. Druze are called brigands. Everyone is oppressed in a different way. That's what's special about empires. They're large, very diverse populations. They're not democratic, so no one feels like they're part of the empire. Everyone's excluded from political power. No one gets social services. So, they're all oppressed. But to say that some are more oppressed than others, I'm not sure. Not necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, because in your book you give us a different idea that they weren't over oppressed, and also some of them had a good or high function in Ottoman Empire, depending on their qualification. Just not because they were Alawite, they were forbidden to those functions.
That's the same again for every population in the empire. Every empire works through intermediaries, right? The empire doesn't send its tax collectors. When we think of empire nowadays, let's be honest, we think about Star Wars with Darth Vader sending his stormtroopers to every corner of the universe to, do what he wants. That's not how empires really worked. Empires were weak. Empires needed local intermediaries. Ayan, we call them sometimes, sheikhs, emirs, people from local society who would say, okay, fine, we'll collect taxes for you. We get a nice status, we get called emir, we get extra money, and so on. And they were the ones who oppressed their own population. They were doing well. They represented the Ottomans, both in the good and the bad. So often it's wrong. Nowadays we think of, the Ottoman Empire was a patchwork of, groups, Christians and Druze and Kurds and Albanians and so on. That's not wrong, but it's also an empire. It's also a society of classes, where those classes that work well with the Ottoman authorities, irrespective of their religion, they're doing well, and the entire population that is under them, they're not doing so well.
Could you explain also what the Ottoman Taifa system was and how it shaped the daily life of the Alawite in the Ottoman Empire?
The Taifa system, there were lots of Taifas. I'm just not sure there was a system, right? And this is the thing again in an empire, any empire, the Ottomans, but any empire, any other empire too, every group gets treated differentially. Some pay a special tax because they're Christians. Some pay a special tax because they have sheep. Some pay a special tax because they cultivate rice, right? There's no one law that counts for everyone. So every taifa in the entire Ottoman Empire is treated differently. Some taifas are, defined by their religion. Some taifas are defined by their military status, right? The word taifa in Ottoman documents often, you get the Janissary taifa, you get the Christian taifa, you get the Kurdish taifa, you get the baker's taifa, like I was saying, asnaf are sometimes called taifa. The word taifa can mean, many different things at many different moments. And it's important. That's how the empire is constituted and works. But to call it a system, really the special thing about empires is that there is no system. Everything's different. This is what they tried to change in the 19th century. The Tanzimat, when they decide, okay, we've got a huge patchwork of different groups that we treat differently. That's not how modern states work. The French and the English are doing so much better. They're creating citizens, one law for everyone. We have to do that too. That's when they try, it doesn't work very well, but they try to change it and make one category of Ottoman citizen.
But unfortunately, it was so late when they did it.
It was late. The Europeans were already taking Tunisia, taking Algeria, taking this, taking that.
They wasn't in their old golden age and the sick man.
And to be honest, it's mission impossible for any empire, because once you do educate all of your people, the first question you ask is, okay, our national education system in the Ottoman Empire, what language is it going to be? Well, to the Ottoman Empire in Istanbul, obviously Turkish. And then you get your old ulama families of Aleppo and Damascus. We're not going to teach our kids Turkish. Arabic is, it's a more cultivated language, 1,000 years longer. Then when you start educating everyone, that's when you realize, that's when the Ottomans and the rest of the world realizes, empires, those days are over. Nowadays, it's citizens who have one national identity. That's going to be the future.
But about what you said about Aleppo and Damascus, Aleppo was more Ottoman than Damascus. Many people, even nowadays, speak Turkish, especially now.
Especially maybe again, Sure. I mean, Aleppo was more in the middle of things. They were close to Turkish inhabited areas, Kurdish inhabited areas, Armenian inhabited areas. Was it more Ottoman? I wouldn't say so. Once again, Aleppo was a bigger city than Damascus, very international, very different people. But you had different parts of the empire, Erzurum, it's all Turks. Damascus, all old classical families, all Arabic speakers.
Yeah.
But they were as much integrated in the Ottoman Empire as places like Aleppo or Saqif or whatever.
You mentioned also something so important and attract my attention about the Ibn Taymiyyah syndrome and the deep historical fear among some Alawis that all the Sunnis want to kill them. And how you do see the impact of this fear nowadays and also before during the Ottoman Empire? And do you think that the Assad regime used this Ibn Taymiyyah syndrome to make a fear among his community, to be with him in his side?
I'm a historian of the Ottoman period. I'm not an expert of modern political science. This Ibn Taymiyyah syndrome, I got this from an activist historian living in Belgium who wrote about this.
Okay.
I think that's probably true from what I understand. The idea, throughout history, once again, I don't want to romanticize. I don't want to present the Ottoman Empire as everyone having been a happy minority or something. That's not it. No one was happy.
Yeah.
But this idea, yes, that we have always been persecuted, we have always been oppressed. In a sense, yes, but everyone was, so don't think it's special. It's only in modern times where, social identity, religious identity counts for your political participation in modern states, that it's important for the Alawis, just like any other community, to say, this is our monolithic historical identity. And the Sunnis have always hated us as the Shi'is or the Alawis, which, maybe in theory it's true, but in practice, and this is what you can show with Ottoman documents, the theory doesn't mean very much. Okay, no one's going to write something nice about Alawis and Shi'is and Druze, but the fact of the matter is all they want is their participation, their taxes, and their support. It's in modern times where I guess it's important for a not very democratic regime like Bashar al-Assad to associate himself with people he can trust from his own villages, and to recall to them, look, we have to stick together because all of the Sunnis have always been trying to oppress or even kill all of us. Historically, that's not true. That's not true. And it's not only a historian working on Ottoman sources who will say that. I think in 2016, the same year my book came out, there was a declaration of Alawi sheikhs, anonymous, living in exile, I think in Germany, who were not with the Assad regime. Not all Alawis were with Assad. And a lot of them said, look, all of this is not true. He's trying to scare people with the Ibn Taymiyyah syndrome so that they're all loyal, so that they all stick together because they're scared. Historically, that's not true. And these were Alawi sheikhs saying that.
And they paid a lot of price during the war.
They paid a high price.
Now,
High price.
Unfortunately. And anyway, and even when he came to the power, he forgot them because he was a son of the city, big cities like Damascus.
Bashar, sure, yes, even within this is something important as well. We, for political purposes, tend to talk about the Alawis, the Druze, the Christians, the Kurds, the Albanians, and it's easy to forget. And I try to show that a little bit in my book. It's difficult because we don't have a lot of sources. But even within these communities, within these taifas, there's huge differences. There's class differences, like I said. The rich Alawis are profiting from their association with the Ottoman state. Some families are, more pro-Ottoman. Some are brigands and fight the Ottomans all the time. Some areas, they have great relations with their neighbors, with their Sunni neighbors, with their Ismaili neighbors, whatever. Other areas, it's constant warfare. So every time nowadays we talk about, the Alawis are like this. The Albanians are like this. The Bedouin are like this. The Jews are like this. Whatever. It never really works. Never really works.
Like that. Okay. And in your opinion, how do you think the Ottoman rule affect the life of Alawite community? And in what ways did the Ottoman integrate them into the imperial structure?
That's a very big question because, Ottoman rule was 400 years long in Syria. So it lasted a long time and things changed over time. I would say at the beginning what the Ottomans did was not very different from what the Mamluks before them and the Ayyubids before them did. All of these were strong empires that had kind of a more and more of a Sunni ideology. So they weren't going to, celebrate the Alawis and the Shi'is and so on. But yeah, I mean, the main thing they wanted was taxes, as always. And it's only very late in the Ottoman Empire, like I said, that the Ottomans kind of wake up and realize, okay, we have to change our rapport with all of our population. Our main resource is people. We have to educate them. We have to make them happy. We have to, give them the same language, if possible, the same religious ideology, create schools, create institutions. But that only came very late, like we said. So between that time, the Ottoman Empire, like I said, did not provide social services to anyone. They integrated the leaders of basically all communities for the purposes of getting taxes. So in that sense, the Alawis were not different than any other community in the city and the countryside, Sunni, non-Sunni. Everyone was supposed to pay the maximum of taxes. And you need local people to help you do that. So those people were integrated in the Ottoman Empire to their profit. The rest of the population, did not like their political leaders. They were just being exploited, so they were not so much integrated. But again, that's the same for everyone.
So if they wasn't so much integrated, we can say that they were hiding in the mountain. As this stereotyping we have that the Christian of Lebanon were always hiding in the mountain, Mont Liban, and the Alawite also, mountain of Syria, in Kassab, and
the mountain refuge. And there's other historians, great historians of Lebanon, Kamal Salibi and so on, who have written on this and said, once again, this is modern identification. I mean, modern nationalism, this is true in the Ottomans in the Middle East, it's true everywhere. Modern nationalists everywhere like to point to past suffering, right? They like to point to how they were oppressed by this and that empire or these and those foreigners, and this is why we survived, we stuck together, and this is why we are who we are today. This is normal. And for the Christians and people in the mountains and so on, this is an important part of national identity in Lebanon.
Exactly.
Important part of sectarian identity with the Alawis and so on. This is true. But for example, Kamal Salibi in Lebanon showed, and this is true, show me the periods of historical oppression. They're just not there. They never fled into the mountains of oppression because of oppression. The only people who ever oppressed the Maronites were basically the Byzantines, right? Because they actually cared about the differences between Maronite and Orthodox Church and so on. So this idea, we had to flee into the mountains, there's no historical evidence for that.
Okay.
And for the Alawis, I can say the same thing. The reason the Alawis are in the mountains is because Alawi missionaries came to everywhere. Alawism was a big thing in medieval times. In the cities where other empires, the Ayyubids came, the Mamluks came, they built mosques and built madrasas and sort of cleaned up religion. So the older forms of religion stayed in the mountains, but no one fled into the mountains. That didn't happen, as far as we can see from the documents. Didn't happen.
Okay. And also during the Assad regime, talking about Alawi is what from what I remember, it was such as a taboo or forbidden to talk. So did you face any difficulty or sensitivity when reaching this topic? Especially, I think you were living in Aleppo or Syria even for several years.
Well, it was not so difficult for me. First of all, if you work on Ottoman history, most people think, whatever, that's not important, so that's good. The other thing is, for this book, I didn't actually do a lot of research in Syria because my main sources, there's not a lot of chronicles from the area. My main sources are either in Istanbul or in Tripoli in Lebanon. Because Tripoli was the Eyalet capital. Later we called it Vilayet, but in the Ottoman period, Eyalet.
Exactly.
The province of Tripoli, which covered the Alawi mountains, which covered Latakia and Jabla and so on. So the Mahkama Shari'iyya of that province was in Tripoli. So the sijilat, the records of the Mahkama are still in Tripoli, so I did a lot of research there. In Syria, I did some research in the sense that I went to visit shrines, maqams, areas where Alawi sheikhs were buried. With my family, I was there in 2010, 2011, just when things started going bad. And we went into the mountains Hama and so on, people were already very, very nervous. Things were starting to go very bad.
Okay, yeah, 2011. Yeah.
But that was not essential to my research. My research is in the written documents in Istanbul and Tripoli.
So in Latakia, المحكمة الشرعية أو في Latakia, we didn't find anything, or in Takia, Iskenderun?
No. All of those cities, it's hard to say if they had a mahkama. It would not have been Latakia until maybe the 18th century before Jabla was the capital. But no one knows about Mahkama Sharia sigils of records of Jabla. No one's ever found them. We have a few documents from the Egyptian period, 1831 to 1841, that are from Latakia.
Okay.
But I think the original is not in Latakia, the original is in Cairo, I think. Okay. So unfortunately for those medium-sized cities, we don't have sources.
Okay. The French mandate created Alawite state in 1920 or 22 maybe.
20, yeah.
Yeah. Why did they do this? And was it a way to separate the coast, the Syrian coast, the Alawite Syrian coast from the interior Sunni? And why did the French also choose only the Alawite to be the beginning of the Syrian army?
Well, the first question is relatively easy. I mean, when the French took over from the Ottomans in 1920, basically no one wanted them, right? Yeah. No one wanted to see foreign soldiers, French soldiers from Europe, Christian soldiers, whatever the reason is. No one wanted them on their soil. So everyone resisted as good they could, but there was no coordination, right? Yeah. The Alawis in Antakya and Latakia, they couldn't coordinate with the Druze of Suwaida. And the French, very knowingly, because they had a lot of experience in empires at this point, knew that they had to keep these people separate. They knew that they didn't want to have a Syrian national feeling develop all over the country that would make life impossible for the French occupation. And so, they tried different formulas. They changed the borders all the time, right? They once had a state of Damascus and a state of Aleppo separate, and a state of the Alawis and a state of the Druze, and the Syrian desert that was Bedouin controlled, that was completely separate. So they tried to do everything to prevent people from saying, hey, no, look, we're all Syrians.
To be united.
Because Syrian identity was something new. It was, it's like any national identity, you have to invent it first. And the French did everything to keep them apart. Okay. And in doing so, they always found some people who agreed with them. There were some Alawis who said, we don't want to be in the same state with, those Sunnis who have always oppressed us. Yeah. And other Alawis said, come on, the Sunnis didn't always oppress us. That's ridiculous. Let's get rid of the French. We can work together. Religion isn't everything. Yeah. So even then, within the community, you had many different opinions.
And I'm not sure if, I remember when I read one of your papers, you mentioned something about Sulaiman al-Assad, the grandfather of Bashar al-Assad. Yeah, so he is truly and was refusing the state of Alawite. Yeah, because later on, with the Syrian revolution, many people wanted to make him as a traitor, and for each one his own, views. Or
so in the 1920s, especially in 1936. Why in 1936? Because there was a extreme left-wing government in France that was going to did sign a treaty with the Kutla Wataniya, with the national bloc to make Syria independent. Yes. Yeah. In the end, things changed.
They go to Paris. I think they went to Paris.
They went to Paris, they signed it, but in the end, the French government changed. They didn't ratify it, so it took another 10 years. Yeah. But in that period, there was a lot of different ideas, and Syria might have become an independent country. And there again, some Alawis thought, this was a great idea. Some said, no, this will be horrible. We want the French to stay here and continue. And so what people did, what could they do? It wasn't very democratic, the mandate either. They wrote petitions. Sent them to the French High Commissioner in Beirut, sent them to the French Foreign Minister in Paris, and so on. So tons of these petitions. I've seen a bunch of them. Yeah. And some of them say, yes, we love the French and we don't want a Syrian national state. And the others say, no, we want a Syrian national state, get rid of the French. And so I found a petition, it's absolutely the original, and it's signed by Sulaiman al-Assad. We don't want the French. We can live very well together with other Syrians. Who cares about religious differences? It's not a problem. Now, what happened, for some reason, I'm not quite sure how this worked. I think in 1982, a book came out by a anti-Hafiz al-Assad polemicist.
Western?
No, Arab. I forget his name right now. It'll come back. And he claimed he found a petition that said the opposite. Where the Alawis, and I've seen petitions, these petitions exist. There are petitions signed by 5 or 6 or 7 or 20 Alawis that say, the Sunnis have always been mean to us, and we don't want the French to live. Our situation is like the Jews settling in Palestine, who are nice people. We have to be protected. These petitions exist, but I haven't seen, and I've seen a bunch of them, but I haven't seen anyone signed by Assad. The only petitions I've seen are the exact opposite. So this rumor came up. I don't know what the basis. I think I know what the basis of a rumor.
Political.
It's political.
Yeah.
Someone wanted to took one of these petitions, kind of changed the signature, or said the signature was different. Said, "Oh yeah, this is Assad signing it. That proves that the president's back then the president's father has always been a traitor to Syria and so on."
And just
silly.
I know. And just for our listener or our viewer, we are talking here. We are not defending anyone, but just we are talking about reality based on document.
Yeah.
Because some people also maybe they will misunderstood.
I'm always surprised, and I've written this as well. These are rumors, and it took me maybe 10 minutes at the archives in La Courneuve, Paris, to find the big volume of all these petitions in 1936. And like I said, half of them say things about, are against Syria, and half of them are for Syria.
Okay.
So it's not surprising.
Exactly.
Other historians have said this for many years. There was not one opinion among Alawis.
Sure, it's normal.
It's normal, and it happens that back then Suleiman al-Assad was one of the pro-Syrian signatories. Okay. There's a petition. He signs a petition with I think 85 other people. Wow. So he's a low-level Alawi, notable from the mountains of Latakia. Fine. The opposite exists as well, but in this case, Assad signed the pro-Syrian petition. Okay. Now, that the situation in 1982 with the civil war, basically, that there's political opponents who will do anything to change things, and that people, rather than going to the archives to check, is he right or not, simply repeat the same rumor over and over, including at one point the French foreign minister, I think at the UN meeting, sort of tried to insult Bashar al-Assad, saying, "Your own grandfather, loved us," and so. No, it's not true.
Really? It happened?
Yeah,
I didn't see it. Wow.
Yeah, happened in. I have to check the date.
Wow.
But he heard this rumor as well, and he tried to use it to, criticize. Wow. Okay, why didn't you go to the archives of your own foreign ministry to check if it's true? Because it's not true.
Because I remember when I read it, I was surprised. I said, "Wow, here we have documents that prove the opposite."
Oh.
Yeah. And during your writing your book, how you think that the history of Alawid shape their position nowadays in Syria or in the East?
That's not a question for me, because I don't know enough about the current situation. I mean, once again, in very general terms, things that were not important in the Ottoman Empire, like social identity, like people overall, because there were no citizens, there were only subjects, this changed. This changed in the modern era of education, of founding of political parties, of elections. Okay, the elections are not always democratic, but the Ba'ath Party in Syria, it's important that it had a lot of people in it that represented or claimed to represent the poor people of the mountains, the poor people of Hama, and so on. Yeah. And in that sense, the sectarian identities that people formed in that period, and you always form the identity on the basis of what happened or what you think happened in history. So that became very important. The idea that, yes, we were oppressed because of our religion, and this is why we have to stick together. This is why we like a party that is very non-religious, that is very secular, and so on. All of these things are important.
Okay. During also your writing this paper and research, reading books, did you find anything interesting that or surprised you about the Alawid community, or something new?
Well, in a sense, I've already said it, and I write this in my book myself. I wrote a book on the Alawi community, and my conclusion in some ways is there is no such thing as the Alawi community. Okay? Don't think, I mean, yes, all Alawis have some similarities. All Alawis, have religious conceptions about Ali and derived from Shiism and so on. But the experiences of the Alawis, if you look at it closely, the experiences of the Alawis in Latakia and the Alawis in Antakya and the Alawis in whatever, Safita and so on, they are so different that it's always wrong to talk about the Alawis.
Okay.
Some Alawis worked very well with the Ottomans. Some were oppressed.
Yes.
Some Alawis wanted the French to maintain their little state. Some said, no, we want to be part of Syria. So I think it's legitimate to ask the question, this is important. How did the Alawis live under the Ottoman Empire? Which is what I tried to do.
Yeah.
But then we shouldn't be surprised when we see, there's no easy answer. There's no one picture.
Exactly.
There's no one experience.
So it's not just one community or one the same opinion, the same idea. They are different as any other community.
As any other community. And
do not put them in a small box and we have like
don't put them in a box, and also be aware that identification by religion, by sect, by tribe, whatever it is, it's one way of identifying. It's not the only way. So sometimes, I'm not saying religious identity isn't important. I'm not saying that some Alawis were not really badly oppressed by the Ottomans. But sometimes religion is the reason. Sometimes it's not the reason.
Tribe, maybe.
Tribe can be more important. In Ottoman documents of the 16th century, it's something I'm looking at now, they never use the word Alawi or Nusayri. It's all about Kelbis. The Kelbi tribe. Because the Kelbis are one big tribe of the Alawi community that is still remembered nowadays. People will still say, these families are Kelbis and so on. But it's not the only one. In the 16th century, they had the reputation of being very fierce, actually of being migrants, of being immigrants. And so the Ottomans, yes, they insulted them as heretics, but they didn't worry about the other Alawis. Their problem was those Kelbis. That changes again. That's not always like that. There's not one model.
From a historian perspective or point of view, what can Syrian today learn from earlier period you studied, and how can this lesson help us to provide repeating old mistake?
I'm sure people will find new mistakes to make anyways. So
unfortunately,
history does not repeat itself, but history is valuable because, especially this kind of history about communities, areas, geographies that are not so well known, we have the idea that we know how everyone lived in the Ottoman Empire, but when we look at it closely, it becomes more complex. And in a way, my job as a historian, I think the job of any historian is making things more complicated. Is saying,
not to clarify.
Well, that helps clarify and making it more complicated. But by saying, look, don't think that the cliches that we have, all Alawis were oppressed, all Greeks were oppressed. Look at it closely. It's not that simple. There's different experiences. One experience, there was not one Alawi experience over 400 years of Ottoman rule or 20 years of French rule. Things were different. And because everyone uses nowadays, everyone for political purposes, everyone tries to draw on history to create their political identity, to insist on the fact that they're right, to say we have to do this because this was our experience for 400 years. It's the job of historians to say, no, it's not that simple. You can focus on this aspect of history, but you can also take other examples from history. There's examples from history of violence between Alawis and Sunnis and so on. But there's also examples, if you want, there's also examples of the opposite, of cooperation and not caring about religious differences. So some people want to insist on religious differences nowadays. And others can say, that's not how it was throughout history. That's not true that there was only one way. It's not true that we were always persecuted.
Yeah, maybe we need sometimes to forget the past, maybe. Or try not to forget, but try to focus on what we make us similar, what we reunite us to build a country.
That's absolutely right. And one of the greatest theoretical historians not working on the Ottoman Empire, but of nationalism. I think it's Benedict Anderson, if I'm not confusing with someone else, said that the important thing is to basically to have forgotten the divisive problems of the past. I mean, no one's stupid. No one's actually going to, forget that these things happened. But yeah, sometimes you have to put aside what happened. You have to recognize it. And you have to say,
this is important.
Recognize it. You have to be honest about it. I think the worst thing you can do is try to hide things that happened in the past or to falsify. And you have to say, yeah, look, there was violence. Just like in Europe, the Protestants, the Catholics used to bash their heads in. Let's not say that didn't happen. It did happen. But at one point you have to say, okay, look, it's over. Let's go forward. Let's be honest, but let's go forward and try something new.
Stefan Winter, we arrived at our end of this beautiful discussion. Thank you so much for joining me and being my guest here, and let us to know more about you and your books, especially the Alawite community. Looking forward to hear more about your news, your next future research, and have a safe trip to Istanbul.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.